The Custom Act 1962 Brief Summary. Section 26 to 50. Section 26 of the Customs Act 1962 Refund of Duty on Goods Re-exported. What Section 26 deals with? Section 26 provides refund of customs duty when imported goods are re-exported out of India without being used or after very limited use and subject to prescribed conditions. In simple words, if goods are imported, duty is paid, but later those goods are sent back outside India, the importer can claim a refund of the duty paid. Key conditions under Section 26. Goods must be re-exported. The imported goods should be exported back out of India. Goods should not be used. Generally, goods must be unused. Limited use may be allowed if such use was necessary to test the goods or check their quality. Time limit for re-export. Re-export must take place within 6 months from the date of import. Customs authorities may extend this period on sufficient cause being shown. Proof of identity. The importer must prove to customs that the goods re-exported are the same goods that were originally imported. Procedure and conditions. Refund is subject to rules, procedures, and documentation prescribed under customs law, shipping bill, bill of entry, duty payment proof, etc. Amount of refund. Full duty refund is generally allowed after deducting any drawback already claimed and any charges prescribed if applicable. Practical examples. Imported machinery found defective and returned to foreign supplier. Imported samples rejected after testing. Wrong supply received from overseas vendor. Goods imported for exhibition and later re-exported. In all such cases, Section 26 enables recovery of customs duty paid. Important distinction. Section. Purpose. Section 26. Refund when duty paid goods are re-exported. Section 23. Remission when goods are lost, destroyed before clearance. Drawback. Sec 74. Refund when goods are used and then re-exported. Below is a clear, exam-oriented and practice-ready explanation of Section 27 of the Customs Act 1962, useful for CA, Customs Broker Exam, GST Customs Practice. Section 27. Claim for refund of duty interest. 1. Purpose of Section 27. Section 27 provides the legal procedure and conditions under which an importer or exporter can claim refund of customs duty or interest that has been paid in excess or wrongly paid. Do. Who can claim refund? Any person who has paid customs duty or paid interest or paid both in excess or not required under law. 3. Time limit for filing refund. Normal time limit. Refund application must be filed within 1 year from the relevant date. Relevant date. Important for exams. Depends on the situation. For example, provisional assessment finalized date of adjustment of duty. Payment under protest, no time limit applies. Duty paid due to court order date of such order. Export duty refund date of export. 4. Form manner. Refund application must be filed in the prescribed form. Must include documentary evidence proving duty interest was paid. Refund is due. Incidence of duty has not been passed on. Important. 5. Principle of unjust enrichment. Core concept. Refund will not be given to the applicant if the burden of duty has been passed on to another person, e.g., customer. In such cases, refund amount is credited to Consumer Welfare Fund, CWF. 6. Exceptions to unjust enrichment. Refund is paid directly to the applicant, not to CWF, in cases like export duty refund, refund of duty on inputs used in exports, refund to UN, embassies, duty paid under protest. Buyer has not borne the duty burden. 7. Refund after finalization of provisional assessment. If duty was provisionally assessed under Section 18. On final assessment, excess paid refundable. Application under Section 27 required. Subject to unjust enrichment. 8. Interest on delayed refund, Section 27A. If refund is not sanctioned within 3 months from application date, interest becomes payable by government. Rate notified by central government. No. Important practical points. Refund can be sanctioned provisionally. Department may issue show cause notice before rejecting refund. Refund order is a speaking order. Appeal lies under Section 128 if refund rejected. Section 28 of the Customs Act 1962. Recovery of duties not levied short levy erroneously refunded. Section 28 empowers customs authorities to recover customs duty that was not levied or short levied or erroneously refunded or short paid at the time of import-export. One key cap: when does Section 28 apply? It applies whenever customs later finds that less duty was collected or wrongly refunded due to wrong classification, incorrect valuation, wrong exemption claimed, clerical assessment error, suppression or misstatement of facts. Though time limits for issuing notice, SCN. Normal cases, no fraud, no suppression. Time limit, 2 years. Applicable where short payment is due to bona fide error. Extended period, fraud suppression, willful misstatement. Time limit 5 years. Applicable when duty evasion involves intent to evade. Key point, burden to prove fraud suppression lies on the department. 3. Who issues the notice? Proper officer of customs issues a show cause notice, SCN, demanding differential duty, interest, penalty where applicable. 4. Opportunity of being heard. Importer-exporter must be given opportunity to submit written reply, to seek personal hearing. Order must be a reasoned, speaking order. 5. Voluntary payment before SCN, Section 28. 5. If the person accepts the short payment and pays duty plus interest voluntarily before SCN, no SCN is issued and no penalty in normal cases. 6. Key cap penalty provisions linked with Section 28. Situation. Penalty. Normal case. No penalty if duty plus interest paid. Fraud bata suppression. Penalty up to 100% of duty. Payment within 30 days of order. Reduced penalty 25%. 7. Interest liability. Interest is mandatory. Calculated from date duty became payable till date of actual payment. 8. Important subsections to remember. Subsection. Purpose. 28. 1. SCN for normal cases. 28. 4. SCN for fraud suppression. 28. 5. Voluntary payment before SCN. 28. 6. No SCN after voluntary payment. 28. 8. Adjudication order. 28. 11. Recovery even if assessment done. 9. Practical example. Imported goods assessed at 10 lakh रुपए. Actual value found later 12 lakh रुपए. Duty short paid 40,000 रुपए. Customs issues SCN under Section 28. Importer pays duty plus interest. Penalty depends on intent timing. Section 29 of the Customs Act 1962, arrival of vessels and aircrafts at customs ports airports. What Section 29 says? In simple terms, Section 29 mandates that every vessel or aircraft coming to India from a place outside India must arrive only at a notified customs port or customs airport. It cannot land, anchor, or call at any non-customs location unless specifically permitted. Key provisions explained. Compulsory arrival at notified place. Foreign-going ships must arrive at a customs port. Foreign origin aircraft must arrive at a customs airport. No unauthorized landing or anchoring. A vessel aircraft cannot land, anchor, or halt at any place other than a notified customs port airport. Exception, permission by proper officer. In exceptional situations, e.g., emergency, distress, weather, the proper officer of customs may permit arrival or landing at a non-customs place, subject to conditions. Purpose of Section 29. Ensures customs control over international traffic. Prevents smuggling and evasion of duty. Enables proper import-export documentation and checks from the first point of entry. Practical illustration. A cargo ship from Singapore must dock at Nhava Sheva, Chennai, etc., notified customs ports. An international flight must land at Delhi-Mumbai International Airport, customs airport. If an aircraft makes an emergency landing at a non-customs airstrip, customs permission and supervision are required. Consequences of violation. Arrival at an unauthorized place without permission can attract penalties, confiscation. Other actions under the Customs Act read with penal provisions. Section 30 of the Customs Act 1962, delivery of import manifest import report. What Section 30 says? In simple terms, Section 30 requires the person in charge of a vessel or aircraft arriving in India from a place outside India to submit an import manifest for vessels or import report for aircraft to customs within the prescribed time and in the prescribed form. Key provisions explained. Who must file? The person in charge, master of vessel, commander of aircraft, authorized agent. What must be filed? Import manifest for ships. Import report for aircraft. These documents contain details of cargo, passengers, crew, stores, ports of call, etc. Time limit for filing. Vessel, within 24 hours after arrival at the customs port. Aircraft, within 12 hours after arrival at the customs airport. Time limits may be varied by rules notifications. Mode form. Filed in the prescribed format, now largely electronic, IceGate. No amendment without permission. Once filed, amendments are allowed only with permission of the proper officer of customs. Purpose of Section 30. Enables customs to know what has entered India. Forms the basis for grant of entry inward, Section 31. Prevents unauthorized unloading and smuggling. Facilitates risk assessment and clearance. Practical illustration. A container vessel arriving at Nhava Sheva must file the Import General Manifest, IGM, within 24 hours. An international flight landing in Delhi must submit the import report within 12 hours before cargo clearance begins. Consequences of non-compliance. Penalty for late or non-filing. Delay in entry inward, leading to cargo clearance delays. Possible action under penal provisions of the Act. Section 31 of the Customs Act, 1962, entry inward of vessels. What Section 31 says, in simple terms? Section 31 provides that a vessel arriving from a place outside India cannot unload any imported goods until the proper officer of customs grants entry inward. Key provisions explained. Meaning of entry inward. It is formal permission given by customs to a vessel to start unloading imported cargo at the customs port. When is entry inward granted? Entry inward is granted only after the vessel has arrived at a notified customs port, Section 29, and the import manifest, IGM, has been filed under Section 30. Restriction on unloading. No unloading of import cargo is allowed before entry inward. Any unloading without entry inward is treated as illegal. Discretion of customs officer. Entry inward is granted after verification of documents and arrival particulars. Purpose of Section 31. Ensures customs control before goods enter India. Prevents unauthorized unloading and smuggling. Links documentation, IGM, with physical control of cargo. Practical illustration. A ship arrives at Mumbai port from Dubai. It files the Import General Manifest, Section 30. Customs verifies details and grants entry inward. Only after this, containers can be unloaded. Consequences of violation. Unloading without entry inward may lead to confiscation of goods, penalty on the person in charge. Other actions under the Customs Act. Section 32 of the Customs Act, 1962. Imported goods may be warehoused without payment of duty. What does Section 32 say? Section 32 allows imported goods to be warehoused, stored in a customs-approved warehouse without immediate payment of customs duty, subject to prescribed conditions. In simple words, an importer can postpone payment of customs duty by keeping the goods in a bonded warehouse instead of clearing them for home consumption right away. Key features of Section 32. Duty payment deferred. Customs duty is not payable at the time of import if goods are warehoused. Duty becomes payable only when goods are cleared for home consumption, as per Section 68. Applies only to imported goods. Goods must have been imported into India. Export goods are not covered under this section. Warehousing must be lawful. Goods must be deposited in a customs bonded warehouse. Warehousing is allowed only after filing required documents and complying with customs procedures. Bond security required. Importer must execute a warehousing bond, Section 59. Bond ensures payment of duty, interest, and compliance with law. Practical importance, why this section matters. Improves cash flow, duty payment is deferred. Useful for traders, manufacturers with slow turnover. Ideal for seasonal goods or bulk imports. Common in EOUs, FTWZs, and large trading houses. Example. An importer brings machinery worth 1 crore rupees with 30 lakh rupees customs duty. Instead of paying duty immediately, the importer warehouse the machinery under Section 32 and pays duty only when the machinery is finally removed from the warehouse. Linked provisions for better understanding. Section 59, Warehousing Bond. Section 61, period for which goods may remain warehoused. Section 68, clearance of warehouse goods for home consumption. Section 72, demand of duty if goods are not properly cleared. Section 33 of the Customs Act, 1962. Goods intended for transit or transshipment. What does Section 33 say? Section 33 lays down the conditions and manner in which imported goods meant for transit or transshipment can be allowed to move without payment of customs duty at the first port of arrival in India. In simple words, if goods arrive at one customs station but are not meant to be cleared there and are instead going to another customs station in India or abroad, this section governs how that movement is allowed. Key concepts explained. 1. Transit goods. Goods passing through India to a destination outside India. Example, goods arriving at Mumbai port and going to Nepal via India. 2. Transshipment goods. Goods transferred from one vessel aircraft to another, or moved from one Indian customs station to another. Example, goods unloaded at Chennai port and sent to ICD Bangalore. Main provisions of Section 33. Goods meant for transit or transshipment shall not be cleared for home consumption. Shall not be deposited in a warehouse unless permitted. Must be dealt with strictly as per conditions prescribed by Customs Act. Customs Rules Regulations. Instructions of proper officer. Such goods are allowed to move without payment of import duty. Remain under customs control until they reach the destination. Practical examples. Scenario. Section 33's applicability. Cargo landed at Mumbai, sent to ICD Delhi. Yes, transshipment. Cargo landed at Kolkata, exported to Bangladesh. Yes, transit. Cargo cleared for Indian buyer at port. No, home consumption. Why Section 33 is important? Prevents misuse of duty-free transit. Ensures customs supervision and control. Facilitates smooth international domestic cargo movement. Crucial for ports, ICDs, logistics operators, and customs brokers. Section 34 of the Customs Act, 1962. Restrictions on unloading of imported goods. What does Section 34 say? Section 34 provides that imported goods shall not be unloaded from a conveyance, ship, aircraft, vehicle, etc., except under the supervision of the proper officer of customs and only at approved places. In short, no unloading without customs permission and supervision. Key elements of Section 34 explained simply. 1. Key cap: unloading only with customs supervision. Imported goods cannot be unloaded freely. A customs officer must supervise the unloading process. Prevents pilferage, smuggling, and misdeclaration. Though only at approved places. Unloading must take place at customs ports, airports, ICDs Bata CFS, or any place approved by customs. Unloading at unauthorized places is illegal. 3. Key cap applies to all imported goods. Covers, commercial cargo, baggage, containers, bulk goods. Applies regardless of whether goods are for home consumption, warehousing, transit Bata transshipment. Practical examples. Situation. Allowed under Sec 34. Cargo unloaded at notified port under customs supervision. Yes. Goods unloaded at private jetty without customs officer. No. Aircraft unloading cargo at customs airport with permission. Yes. Emergency unloading without intimation, unless specifically permitted. Consequences of violation. If goods are unloaded without customs supervision or at an unauthorized place, goods may be liable to confiscation. Penalty may be imposed. Customs can initiate anti-smuggling action. Why Section 34 is important? Maintains customs control at the first point of entry. Prevents revenue leakage. Ensures proper accounting and examination of imports. Foundation for subsequent procedures like entry inwards, filing of bill of entry, assessment clearance. Section 35, Appeal to Commissioner, Appeals. Customs Act, 1962. 1. What does Section 35 deal with? Section 35 provides the right to file an appeal before the Commissioner of Customs, Appeals, against certain orders passed by lower customs authorities. 2. Who can file an appeal? An appeal may be filed by importer, exporter, any other person aggrieved, against an order passed by Principal Commissioner, Commissioner of Customs as adjudicating authority, or any officer lower in rank than Commissioner, e.g., Assistant Deputy Commissioner. 3. Appellate authority. The appeal lies before Commissioner of Customs, Appeals. 4. Time limit for filing appeal. Normal time limit, 60 days from the date of communication of the order. Condonable delay, further 30 days if sufficient cause is shown. Maximum period 90 days. 5. Form and manner of appeal. Appeal is filed in the prescribed form, Form C.A.8, filed along with copy of the order appealed against, relevant documents, prescribed appeal fee. 6. Pre-deposit requirement. Appeal shall not be entertained unless the appellant deposits 7.5% of the duty demanded or penalty imposed. This is mandatory, subject to maximum cap as prescribed. Pre-deposit is non-refundable till final disposal, but refundable if appeal is allowed. 7. Powers of Commissioner, Appeals. The Commissioner, Appeals, may confirm the order, modify the order, annul, set aside the order. Limitation. He cannot remand the matter back to the adjudicating authority, except where specifically permitted by law. 8. Opportunity of being heard. Appellant must be given a reasonable opportunity of being heard. Orders must be reasoned and speaking orders. 9. Important exclusions. No appeal under Section 35. Section 35 does not apply to orders passed by Commissioner, Appeals, himself. Orders relating to warehousing, drawback, baggage, etc., where special appeal provisions apply. Thus, simple example. An importer receives an order demanding customs duty of 10 lakhs rupees passed by Deputy Commissioner. He can file appeal under Section 35 within 7 days by depositing 7.5% 75,000 rupees before Commissioner, Appeals. Section 36, Powers of Commissioner, Appeals. Customs Act, 1962. 1. What is Section 36 about? Section 36 lays down the powers of the Commissioner of Customs, Appeals, while deciding an appeal filed under Section 35. It explains what the Commissioner, Appeals, can do after hearing the appeal. 2. When does Section 36 apply? When an appeal is validly filed under Section 35. After giving the appellant a reasonable opportunity of being heard. 3. Powers granted under Section 36. After hearing both sides, the Commissioner, Appeals, may confirm the order appealed against, modify the order appealed against, annul, set aside the order appealed against. These powers are final at the first appellate stage, subject to further appeal to CESTAT. 4. No power of remand, very important for exams. The Commissioner, Appeals, cannot remand the case back to the adjudicating authority. He must decide the matter himself. He cannot send the case back for fresh adjudication. This is a key distinction from appellate powers under some other laws. 5. Mandatory opportunity of being heard. Before passing any order, the appellant must be given a reasonable opportunity of personal hearing. Order passed must be a speaking order, reasoned order. 6. Nature of order. Order must be in writing. Reasons must be clearly recorded. Must address the grounds of appeal. 7. Practical example. An importer appeals against a duty demand order under Section 35. The Commissioner appeals may confirm the duty demand, reduce or modify the duty penalty, set aside the order completely, cannot send it back to the Deputy Commissioner for re-examination. 8. Exam-friendly one-line summary. Section 36 empowers the Commissioner appeals to confirm, modify or annul an order appealed under Section 35 after giving an opportunity of being heard but without power of remand. 9. Key distinction for conceptual clarity. Particulars. Section 35. Section 36. Subject. Filing of appeal. Powers while deciding appeal. Authority. Commissioner. Appeals. Commissioner. Appeals. Focus. Procedure limitation. Decision-making powers. Section 37. Procedure in appeal before Commissioner. Appeals. Customs Act, 1962. 1. What does Section 37 deal with? Section 37 prescribes the procedure to be followed by the Commissioner of Customs, Appeals, while hearing and deciding an appeal filed under Section 35. In simple words, it explains how the appeal proceedings are conducted. 2. When is Section 37 applicable? When a valid appeal has been filed under Section 35. When the Commissioner, Appeals, proceeds to hear and dispose of the appeal. 3. Calling for records. The Commissioner, Appeals, may call for records of the case from the adjudicating authority, examine documents, evidence, and records relevant to the appeal. This ensures independent and fair adjudication. 4. Opportunity of being heard. The appellant must be given a reasonable opportunity of being heard. Personal hearing may be granted if requested. Principles of natural justice must be followed. 5. Further inquiry. The Commissioner, Appeals, may make further inquiry as he thinks fit, or direct a subordinate officer to make such inquiry and submit a report. However, final decision must be taken by Commissioner, Appeals, himself. 6. Manner of passing order. Order must be in writing, reasoned, speaking order, must clearly state facts of the case, grounds of appeal, findings and conclusions. 7. No enhancement without notice. If the Commissioner, Appeals, proposes to enhance duty, increase penalty, reduce refund, he must give prior notice and a reasonable opportunity of being heard to the appellant. This is a very important safeguard for taxpayers. 8. Practical example. An importer files appeal against a duty demand. The Commissioner, Appeals, calls for adjudication records, grants personal hearing, may ask an officer to verify valuation details, passes a speaking order. If he intends to increase the duty, he must first issue notice to the importer. Section 38. Communication of orders. Customs Act, 1962. 1. What does Section 38 deal with? Section 38 provides for the manner in which any order or decision passed under the Customs Act must be communicated to the concerned person. In simple words, it explains how and when an order becomes effective by ensuring it is properly served communicated. 2. Why is Section 38 important? Appeal time limits, Sections 35, 128, 129A, etc. start from the date of communication. Ensures natural justice. Prevents disputes about knowledge of the order. 3. Orders covered under Section 38. It applies to any decision or order passed under the Customs Act by proper officer, adjudicating authority, appellate authority. 4. Mode of communication. An order or decision shall be communicated by delivering or tendering a copy to the person concerned, or sending it by post to the person's last known address, or any other manner as may be prescribed, including electronic means, as notified. Communication must be official and provable. 5. Effective date of order. The order becomes operative only after communication. Limitation period for appeal starts from the date of communication, not the date of passing the order. 6. Burden of proof. The department must prove that the order was properly communicated. If communication is defective or not provable, appeal limitation may not start. 7. Practical example. Order passed on 1 June. Order served on importer on 10th June. Appeal limitation of 60 days will be counted from 10th June, not 1st June. Section 39. Appearance by authorized representative. Customs Act, 1962. 1. What does Section 39 deal with? Section 39 allows a person who is required to appear before any customs authority or appellate authority to appear personally or through an authorized representative. In simple terms, it recognizes representation in customs proceedings. 2. Who can appear under Section 39? Any person who is required to appear in any proceeding under the Customs Act or entitled to be heard in any appeal or adjudication, may appear in person or through an authorized representative. 3. Who is an authorized representative? An authorized representative includes a relative or regular employee of the person, advocate entitled to practice law, customs broker licensed under the Customs Act, chartered accountant, cost accountant, company secretary, where permitted, any other person authorized in writing. Authorization must be valid and on record. 4. Where is Section 39 applicable? Representation is allowed before proper officer, adjudicating authority, commissioner, appeals, sestat, any authority under the Customs Act. 5. Important limitations. Authority may require personal appearance if necessary. Representation does not override statutory requirements, e.g., personal verification. 6. Practical example. An importer receives a show cause notice. He may appear personally or authorize his customs broker or CA to represent him during adjudication or appeal hearings. 7. Importance of Section 39. Facilitates professional representation, ensures effective defense and compliance, reduces hardship for taxpayers unfamiliar with law. Section 40. Service of notices. Customs Act, 1962. 1. What does Section 40 deal with? Section 40 prescribes how notices issued under the Customs Act are to be served on the concerned person. In simple words, it explains the valid modes of serving a customs notice so that legal proceedings can lawfully continue. 2. Why is Section 40 important? Proper service of notice is a condition precedent for adjudication. Ensures principles of natural justice. Defective service can invalidate proceedings. 3. Modes of service of notice. A notice may be served by any of the following methods. A. Tendering or delivering personally. Delivered to the person for whom it is intended, or to his authorized agent. B. Registered bata speed post. Sent by post to the person's last known address. C. If above modes are not possible, by affixing the notice on the notice board of the customs house or affixing at the last known place of business or residence. Affixture is used only when normal service is not possible. 4. Who can receive the notice? The person concerned, authorized representative, adult member of the family where applicable, agent or employee as permitted. 5. Presumption of service. When notice is sent by registered post, service is presumed unless proved otherwise. Burden shifts to the person to prove non-receipt. 6. Practical example. A show cause notice is sent to an importer at his registered address by speed post. Even if the importer claims he did not read it, service is treated as valid unless he proves non-delivery. 7. Important exam points. Section 40 Service of notice, not passing of order. Affixture is a last resort. Proper service is mandatory for validity of proceedings. Section 41 Return of documents to the person from whom seized. Customs Act, 1962. 1. What does Section 41 deal with? Section 41 provides that documents seized by customs authorities must be returned to the person from whom they were seized after copies or extracts are taken, unless retention is required by law. In simple words, it balances investigation needs with rights of the person. 2. When does Section 41 apply? When documents, books, or papers are seized under the Customs Act, typically during search, inspection, or investigation. 3. Core provision. Customs authorities may take copies or extracts of the seized documents and then return the original documents to the person concerned. Originals should not be unnecessarily retained. 4. Exception when documents may be retained. Documents need not be returned if their retention is necessary for adjudication proceedings, prosecution, any purpose permitted under the Act. 5. Rights of the person concerned. Entitled to return of original documents after copying. Use originals for business, accounting, or legal purposes. Prevents harassment or prolonged deprivation of records. 6. Practical example. During investigation, customs officers seize import invoices, bills of entry, transport documents. Officers take photocopies or scanned copies. Return originals to the importer unless required for evidence in prosecution. 7. Importance of Section 41. Ensures fair investigation. Avoids disruption of business operations. Statutory compliance. Reflects principles of natural justice. 8. Key exam points. Applies only to documents, not goods. Copies, extracts may be retained. Originals to be returned unless lawfully required. Section 42 Return of seized goods. Customs Act, 1962. 1. What does Section 42 deal with? Section 42 provides that goods seized under the Customs Act must be returned to the person from whom they were seized if no notice is issued within the prescribed time. In simple words, it protects taxpayers from indefinite seizure of goods. 2. When does Section 42 apply? Goods are seized under the Customs Act and no show cause notice (SCN) is issued within the statutory time limit. 3. Time limit for issuing notice. If no notice under Section 124A is issued within 6 months from the date of seizure, then the seized goods must be returned. 4. Extension of time. The Principal Commissioner of Customs may extend the 6-month period by a further period not exceeding 6 months. Extension must be, for sufficient cause, recorded in writing. Maximum seizure period without notice 12 months. 5. Mandatory return of goods. If SCN is not issued and time limit, including extension, expires, return of goods becomes compulsory. 6. Nature of goods. Applies to seized goods, not confiscated goods. Confiscation requires SCN and adjudication. 7. Practical example. Goods seized on 1 January. SCN not issued till 30 June, goods must be returned. If Commissioner grant extension till 31 December, SCN must be issued by then. No SCN even after extension, mandatory return. 8. Importance of Section 42. Prevents arbitrary detention of goods. Ensures speedy investigation. Upholds natural justice and business continuity. 9. Key exam points. Section 42 time-bound seizure. Initial period 6 months. 1 extension maximum 6 months. No notice return of goods is compulsory. Section 43. No confiscation of goods already cleared for home consumption or export. Customs Act 1962. 1. What does Section 43 deal with? Section 43 provides that goods which have already been cleared for home consumption or export cannot be confiscated under the Customs Act. In simple words, once customs clearance is complete, confiscation is not permissible. 2. Purpose of Section 43. Ensures finality of customs clearance. Protects importers-exporters from post-clearance confiscation. Brings certainty and stability to trade. 3. When does this section apply? Section 43 applies when goods have been legally cleared for home consumption, import, or for export, and clearance is granted by a proper officer of customs. 4. Effect of Section 43. Goods cannot be confiscated after clearance. However, other actions are still possible, such as recovery of short-levied or non-levied duty, Section 28. Imposition of penalty on the person concerned. Initiation of prosecution where applicable. Confiscation is barred, but liability is not wiped out. 5. Important clarification. Section 43 does not protect fraudulent clearances. It only bars physical confiscation of goods, not demand of duty, penalty, legal proceedings against persons. 6. Practical example. Goods imported and assessed, duty paid, cleared for home consumption. Later, customs finds undervaluation. Customs cannot confiscate the goods, can issue demand notice, levy penalty, and take legal action. Section 44 of the Customs Act 1962. Delivery of import manifest or import report. Section 44 deals with the time limit and manner in which the import manifest for vessels, aircraft, or import report for vehicles must be delivered to the proper officer of customs after arrival in India. What does Section 44 provide? It states that the person in charge of a vessel or aircraft or a vehicle, road, rail, other conveyance must deliver the import manifest for ship, aircraft, or import report for vehicle within the prescribed time after the arrival of the conveyance at a customs station. Who is responsible? Conveyance. Responsible person. Document. Ship. Master of the vessel. Import manifest. Aircraft. Commander Bata pilot. Import manifest. Vehicle, road, rail. Person in charge. Import report. Time limit. The time and form are prescribed under customs rules, e.g., import manifest, vessels, regulations, import manifest, aircraft, regulations. Generally, must be filed within 24 hours of arrival or before departure if the conveyance leaves earlier. Exact time may vary as per rules and mode of transport. Purpose of Section 44. To inform customs authorities about cargo carried, consignee and consignor details, nature and quantity of goods, enables customs to control imports, prevent smuggling, begin assessment and clearance process. Consequences of non-compliance. If import manifest report is not filed or filed late or filed incorrectly, then penalty may be imposed under the Customs Act. Goods may be detained. Clearance delays occur. Practical example. A ship arrives at Nhava Sheva port carrying containers from Singapore. The master of the vessel must file the import manifest electronically within the prescribed time after arrival, listing all imported goods and packages. Failure to do so may attract penalty and operational delays. Section 45 of the Customs Act 1962. Restrictions on custody and removal of imported goods. Section 45 deals with who can keep, custody, imported goods after they are unloaded at a customs port airport and how those goods can be removed. This section is extremely important in import clearance, warehousing, custodianship, and customs control. Statutory position, plain meaning. Under Section 45 of the Customs Act 1962, imported goods cannot be removed from a customs area unless the importer files a bill of entry and customs duty and other charges are paid or secured, and clearance is permitted by the proper officer. Custody of imported goods. All imported goods unloaded in a customs area shall remain in the custody of a person approved by the Principal Commissioner of Customs. Such person is known as the custodian. Who is a custodian under Section 45? A custodian is a person or entity approved by customs to keep imported goods, such as port trusts, airport authorities, container freight stations, CFS, inland container depots, ICD, private bonded warehouse. Custodians hold goods on behalf of customs, not on behalf of the importer. Key restrictions under Section 45. Aspect. Explanation. Removal of goods. Only after customs clearance. Control. Customs has overriding control. Responsibility. Custodian is responsible for safe custody. Unauthorized removal. Not allowed under any circumstances. Legal responsibilities of the custodian. The custodian must not allow removal of goods without customs permission. Maintain proper records. Produce goods when demanded by customs. Be liable for loss, pilferage, or unauthorized removal. Even if goods are stolen or lost, custodian remains accountable, not customs. Practical example. Example. Imported goods arrive at Nhava Sheva port. Goods are unloaded and kept at a CFS, custodian. Importer cannot take delivery directly. Only after bill of entry is assessed, duty is paid, out of charge, OOC, is given. Then only the custodian can release the goods. Important case law principle, conceptual. Courts have consistently held that custodian acts as an agent of customs. Customs is not liable for loss damage while goods are in custodian's control. Why Section 45 is important? Exam practice. Frequently asked in customs broker licensing exam. Core section for import clearance, custodian liability, port CFS operations. Very relevant for sections 46, 47, 48. Section 46 of the Customs Act 1962. Entry of goods on importation, bill of entry. Section 46 prescribes how an importer must declare imported goods to customs. It mandates filing a bill of entry, BOI, and lays down who files it, when it is filed, and in what form. Statutory core, plain meaning. Under Section 46 of the Customs Act 1962, every importer or customs broker on his behalf must file a bill of entry for imported goods. The bill of entry must be filed in the prescribed form and manner, now electronically via IceGate. Filing can be done before arrival, on arrival, or after arrival, subject to rules. What is a bill of entry? A bill of entry is a statutory declaration by the importer containing description of goods, quantity value, classification, HS code, country of origin, applicable customs duty. No bill of entry, no assessment, no clearance. Types of bill of entry. Type. Purpose. Bill of entry for home consumption. Goods meant for immediate clearance, Sec 47. Bill of entry for warehousing. Goods to be stored in bonded warehouse, Sec 59. Ex-bond bill of entry. Clearance from warehouse for home use. Time of filing, very important. Advance bill of entry. Can be filed before arrival of the vessel aircraft. Normal filing. After arrival of conveyance. Late filing. Delay may attract penalty late fees under regulations. Assessment is done only after filing of bill of entry. Who can file bill of entry? Importer himself or authorized customs broker licensed under Sec 146. Authorization is mandatory. Electronic filing, current practice. Filing is done on IceGate portal. Documents uploaded include invoice, packing list, BL Bata AWB, COO, license, exemption certificates, if any. Paper filing is almost completely replaced by electronic filing. Legal importance of Section 46. Triggers assessment of duty, Sec 17. Basis for clearance of goods, Sec 47. Determines rate of duty, valuation, classification. Wrong declaration may lead to demand, Sec 28. Confiscation, Sec 111. Penalty, Sec 112. Practical example. An importer brings machinery from Germany. Goods arrive at port. Importer files bill of entry under Sec 46. Customs assesses duty. Importer pays duty. Goods cleared under Sec Santalis. Section 47 of the Customs Act, 1962. Clearance of goods for home consumption, out of charge. Section 47 is the final and decisive step in the import clearance process. It authorized customs to release imported goods for home consumption after all legal requirements are fulfilled. Statutory essence, in simple words. Under Section 47 of the Customs Act, 1962, when the importer has paid the assessed duty or duty is exempt and no prohibition applies, the proper officer shall permit clearance of goods for home consumption. This permission is commonly known as out of charge, OOC. Preconditions for clearance under Section 47. Customs will grant clearance only when all the following are satisfied. Bill of entry filed, Section 46. Assessment completed, Section 17. Customs duty paid but are exempted. No prohibition under Customs Act or any other law, FTP, FSSAI, BIS, etc. All documents verified. Only then does Customs issue out of charge. What is out of charge, OOC? OOC is the official customs permission to remove goods from the customs area. Without OOC, goods cannot be taken delivery even if duty is paid. Issued electronically on IceGate. OOC legal clearance of goods. Interest on delayed payment, Section 47, 2. If importer does not pay duty within 2 working days from the date of assessment, interest becomes payable at the notified rate till the date of payment. This provision ensures timely payment of duty. Relationship with other sections. Section. Role. 45. Custody of imported goods. 46. Filing of bill of entry. 47. Clearance for home consumption. 48. Goods not cleared within time. 59. Warehousing instead of home use. Practical example. Importer files bill of entry for electronic goods. Boy assessed at 5 lakh rupee duty. Importer pays duty online. Customs officer verifies compliance. Out of charge granted under Section 47. Goods released by CFS Bataport. Legal significance of Section Santalis. Marks completion of import. Determines end of customs control. Any removal without OOC illegal removal penal action. Used frequently in customs audits, investigations, customs broker exams. Section 48 of the Customs Act, 1962. Procedure in case of goods not cleared, warehoused or transshipped within time. Section 48 deals with imported goods that remain uncleared at the port airport CFS for a long time. It empowers customs to dispose of such goods, usually by auction, to prevent congestion and revenue loss. Core provision, in simple words. Under Section 48 of the Customs Act, 1962. If imported goods are not cleared for home consumption, warehoused, or transshipped within the prescribed time, the proper officer may sell or otherwise dispose of the goods after giving notice to the importer. Time limits under Section 48. Type of goods. Time allowed. Perishable but hazardous goods. Immediately, no waiting. Other goods. 30 days from unloading, extendable by customs. Time starts from date of unloading, not from filing of bill of entry. What options does an importer have before Section 48 action? Within the allowed time, the importer may clear goods for home consumption, Sec 47, or warehouse the goods, Sec 59, or transship the goods. Failure to do any of the above trigger Section 48. Mode of disposal. Customs may sell goods by public auction e-auction, destroy hazardous or prohibited goods, dispose in any prescribed manner. Sale proceeds are adjusted towards customs duty, port CFS charges, other government dues. Any balance is refundable to the importer. Notice requirement. Prior notice to importer is mandatory. Exception, perishable or hazardous goods can be disposed immediately. Important legal principles. Section 48 is a revenue protective provision. Customs is not required to wait indefinitely. Importer bears demurrage, storage charges, risk of auction at lower value. Practical example. Imported machinery arrives on 1st April. Importer neither files bill of entry nor warehouse goods. Goods lie uncleared till 30th April. Customs issues notice. Goods auctioned under Section 48. Relationship with other sections. Section. Link. 45. Custody of goods. 46. Filing bill of entry. 47. Clearance for home consumption. 48. Disposal of uncleared goods. 59. Warehousing option. Section 49 of the Customs Act, 1962. Storage of imported goods in warehouse pending clearance. Section 49 provides temporary relief to importers by allowing imported goods to be stored in a warehouse when they cannot be immediately cleared due to practical or legal reasons. Core provision, Simple explanation. Under Section 49 of the Customs Act 1962, the proper officer may permit imported goods to be stored in a warehouse pending clearance without payment of duty, subject to prescribed conditions. This is temporary storage, not full-fledged warehousing under Section 59. When is Section 49 used? Section 49 is invoked when importer is awaiting license exemption certificate. Final assessment is pending. Market conditions are unfavorable. Importer needs time before deciding. Home consumption or warehousing or re-export. Key features of Section 49 storage. Particulars. Position. Duty payment. Deferred. Nature. Temporary storage. Location. Customs approved warehouse. Ownership. Remains with importer. Customs control. Fully retained. Difference. Section 49 versus Section 59. Aspect. Section 49. Section 59. Purpose. Temporary storage. Long-term warehousing. Bond. Not mandatory. Mandatory bond. Duration. Short-term. Up to 1 year extended. Duty. Deferred. Deferred till ex-bond. Legal conditions. Goods remain under customs control. Customs may allow inspection but examination. Impose conditions but safeguards. Removal without permission is prohibited. Practical example. Importer brings chemical goods. License pending from DGFT. Importer requests Section 49 storage. Customs allows storage in bonded warehouse. Once license received. Importer clears goods, Sec 47, or warehouse goods, Sec 59. Legal importance. Prevents auction under Section 48. Avoids immediate duty burden. Provides flexibility in import planning. Frequently used in bulk imports, project imports, conditional exemptions. Section 50 of the Customs Act 1962. Entry of goods for export, shipping bill of export. Section 50 is the starting point of export customs clearance. It requires an exporter to declare export goods to customs by filing a shipping bill or bill of export in the prescribed form. Statutory core, in simple words. Under Section 50 of the Customs Act 1962, the exporter or customs broker must file a shipping bill for most exports or a bill of export for goods cleared from a warehouse or special cases. The declaration must be true, correct, and complete, and it must be filed in the prescribed electronic form and manner, ISGate. No shipping bill, no export clearance. What is a shipping bill? A shipping bill is a statutory declaration containing exporter consignee details, description, quantity, and value of goods, HS classification, FOB value, export incentives claimed, drawback, ROD TEP, etc. It is the export equivalent of a bill of entry, import side. Types of shipping bills, important for exams. Type, purpose, free shipping bill, no export incentive claimed, drawback shipping bill, claim of duty drawback, export promotion shipping bill, claim of incentives, ROD TEP, advance authorization, EPCG, etc. Bill of export, goods exported from bonded warehouse. Who can file shipping bill? Exporter himself or authorized customs broker licensed under Section 146. Authorization is mandatory if filed through a broker. Electronic filing, current practice. Filed electronically on ISGate. Accompanied by invoice, packing list, export licenses bata LUT bata bond, if applicable. Certificates required under other laws. Legal importance of Section 50. Basis for export examination. Grant of let export order, LEO, under Section 51. Determines eligibility for export incentives, valuation and classification. Wrong declaration may lead to confiscation, Section 113. Penalty, Section 114. Practical example. Exporter files shipping bill for textile exports. Shipping bill filed under Section 50. Customs examines goods and documents. Let export order, LEO, granted under Section 51. Goods allowed to be loaded on vessel. Link with next section. Section. Roll. 50. Filing shipping bill. 51. Grant of let export order. 113. Confiscation, export side. 114. Penalty, export side. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon.